to call to order the meeting of the Township of Hamilton, Monday, February 4th, 2005. Please stand for the flag salute. Judy, would you like to lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law by posting a notice of this meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building and by publication in the Press of Atlantic City on January the 10th, 2019, and the Atlantic County Record on January the 16th, 2019. Mr. Gishard?
Present.
Mr. Kurtz?
Here.
Mrs. Link? Here. Mr. Silva?
Here.
Mayor Schenker?
Here. Can we please have a moment of silence for private reflection? Thank you. We'll start out. We have a guest presentation. Mr. Fred Akers is here in reference to Block 809, Lot 6. How are you, Fred?
Good. Good evening,
Evening.
Mayor and committee members. I'm always happy to come here to Hamilton Township. I thought I should come in and give you an update on how the project is going at the end of 2nd Street there. It looks like we might be 3 weeks away from closing the deal. We have a contract of sale with the owner, and last week we received the preliminary assessment for the property, which is a pretty big deal. It was 127 pages to basically prove that there is no environmental liabilities on the lot. So I've submitted that to Administrator Jacobs and Phil Sartorio, so they have a copy of that. So I thought I'd come and just let you know that it's almost done. The funding is secured from the county and from Green Acres and from the Watershed Association. The Watershed Association is contributing $10,000 to the 50% match to satisfy the owner for what he needs. And he's very interested in selling. He's happy to sell, so it's working out good. I also want to introduce Sue Marks. Probably most of you know her. Sue is a environmental steward, and she's helping us kind of watch over the lot and deal with the transition with the neighbors. And eventually, our vision for this property is to, at the most, take some students there during daylight hours to do some outdoor classroom instruction on river things and maybe look for bald eagles and things like that. So, and we have to put a sign up. So the only development that we envision is the Green Acre sign, which we're required to put up. But I want to thank you for your support and agreeing to, be the owner of this lot in the end. I think it was the right thing to do in this circumstance. And I also want to thank you for your support with the county for the 35 acres on Cologne. As I understand, you sent a letter to the county saying that, you would agree that they should own it, and I think they are moving on it. So that's another 35 acres of open space that would be good to acquire because you couldn't really do anything there. So that's really my report. If you have any questions. Oh, I also want to thank Administrator Jacobs and Phil Sartorio for their help. They really have been great partners and done some significant work to help us along here.
Very good.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Fred.
much,
Thank you.
Fred.
Good job, Fred. Keep it up.
Additions and deletions and late agenda items, I don't believe we have any. So we'll move on to early public comment on the agenda items, excluding items listed for public hearings.
Bruce Dry, item 3A, 4C, and 7E.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4C is a public hearing, so I will wait until that particular time. But on 3A, and I'm representing myself only, as a member of the zoning board, I am not. But I was a member in 2013 and 2014 when the applicant in question came before the zoning board to apply for a continued use variance, which in 2013 the application was denied, and the applicant appealed that to Superior Court, and Superior Court sent it back to the zoning board to be reheard. And after additional witnesses came forward, the zoning board did grant the application for the use, and the decision and resolution, if I can just read, it's very short. Parting Grass LLC was granted as a juice bar with adult entertainment as a prior non-conforming use, and continue as long as it is not changed by the applicant, and further that the zoning officer should issue a permit to the applicant to continue said use. So my question is, and I'm not stating whether I'm in favor or against the transfer,
Right.
but I'm only interested in the what seems to be, and in the context of the hearings, as and I'll quote, as long as it is not changed by the applicant. So my question and concern is going from a juice bar and adult entertainment to adding a liquor license to that property. The question I have, will that be a violation of the conditional use variance granted to the applicant? So that's my question for your consideration. The next would be 7E. I'm just interested, when you get to that part of the consent agenda, I'd be interested in knowing some detail. Sometimes your consent agendas, you just vote to accept all of the items. But if you could explain in some detail, how the costs and the details of that resolution, if you could, for
Sure.
and if I have questions, I'll hold those for public comment at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mike?
No, sir.
No? All right. Move on to 3, discussions. Formal action may be taken. A resolution to accept or reject the place-to-place transfer of a culinary retail consumption license number 011233021009 to 6760 Harding Highway.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to comment on that?
Please do.
Unfortunately, I was ill at the last meeting and didn't make it here. But I've reviewed the matter with my associate. The public hearing was conducted because there was an objection. If there is an objection, you're obligated to conduct a public hearing, so you did. I'm told no objectors appeared to testify, and the hearing was closed, properly so. I have conferred with the chief, and the chief is making a recommendation, and I'll let him speak for himself. With respect to that, there are 2 conditions that are being sought. I did consult with the applicant's attorneys, and it has been represented to me that they don't object, but I would like the chief to place on the record his suggested conditions on the place-to-place transfer.
Okay, thank you. Chief? Your conditions?
The conditions, the first condition would be that the upstairs of the establishment be included on the liquor license. And the second condition would be that there be a security plan that's developed and that we would have a chance to review and comment on that.
And so the record is clear, that review and comment is not in any way the chief or the police department's approving the security plan. They're simply going to review it and make recommendations.
Okay.
Can I ask why you want the second floor included?
I think I can answer that better than he, but I will allow him.
I would defer to the solicitor on that one.
I
white
had
hair.
discussions with the Deputy Attorney General who has been assigned to the ABC, and they've had situations in other parts of the state where portions of a building were not licensed and other portions were. And there was a decision that came out in the borough of Sayreville that addressed this. And although he said to me, I can't tell you that you have to do it, it would be my ardent recommendation that you do it. So when I had the discussions with the chief about it, it creates a better enforcement angle for the township to make sure that the obligations of the applicant are complied with pursuant to the ABC rules and regulations. Because if it were not, they would not have the right of entry unless there was probable cause. So I support it as your solicitor, and the chief supports it as your chief of police.
Okay. Has this been,
And I've had no,
Discuss.
well, the applicant is represented here in the audience, and his attorney is here as well. Mr. Bragg is his attorney. I didn't speak to Mr. Bragg today. I spoke to Mr. Barrera of his law firm. And I did get an email from Mr. Barrera saying that the applicant had no objection. Is that correct, Steve?
okay, fine.
Bob, is
So,
this resolution?
I drafted the resolution accordingly.
Oh, okay, it's already been adjusted?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
So is this the new,
So the only thing is, Mr. Stride brought up an issue, is, you know, is that a problem, or are we okay? Phil, if you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Stride was correct in his brief summary of the prior zoning board actions. However, during the course of the second hearing that was submitted to the board, and it actually was part of the chairman's comments, that there had been a previous case in the township where a licensed bar had been converted to a juice bar and been through court and been found not to be a change of use. Okay. So, you know, as discussed that night, basically, you know, it's drinking and entertainment, for lack of a better term. Whether or not alcohol is served or not was not material. So that by this action, it's still not a change of use.
Okay. So you're okay with
Yes.
moving forward?
As
Okay,
long as
that's all
it's strictly the transfer in the one business in that location, we're okay with it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
well, what happened with volcanic eruptions? Wasn't that one of the reasons they gave up the ghost? They had to have a juice bar there and no liquor?
I wasn't sitting in this seat when that happened, so I can't answer you.
There were several of them. I know Joe Nichols was trying to, he tried to have an ordinance passed where you couldn't bring your own liquor or your own, for many of these tapas and whatever. But I guess it really doesn't matter, huh? They went through the courts, and they said a juice bar is the same as liquor. Okay.
All right. Anyone else? What's your pleasure?
I move the resolution authorizing a place-to-place transfer of the preliminary retail consumption license number 011233-021-009 to 6760 Harding Highway.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second?
Excuse me. Subject to the two conditions that were placed on the record by the chief.
Yes.
Yes, they're in the resolution.
They're in the resolution, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Rita, could we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes,
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
And Mayor Schenker?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. Public hearing, adoption of ordinances. Ordinance 1893, 2019, an ordinance vacating a portion of Volunteer Way. We've already had, did we have a public hearing on this?
We introduced
We
it.
introduced it the last time, pardon me. So this is a public hearing. Anybody in the public like to speak?
Motion to close public portion?
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second to close public portion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone want to move it?
I'll move ordinance 1893, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Rita, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mayor Shanker?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. B, ordinance 1894, 2019, an ordinance amending Chapter 144 of the Township Code to provide for or amend fees for certain construction permit applications in the Township of Hamilton, County of Atlantic. This is also a public hearing. It's open to the public. Anybody like to speak on this?
Move to close the public portion.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second to close public portion. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. C, ordinance 1895, 2019.
Got to vote on it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to move ordinance 1894-2019.
Thank you, John.
Second.
A motion and a second. Rita, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mayor Shanker?
Yes. Thank you. C, ordinance 1895, 2019, an ordinance amending Chapter 301, Article 1 of the Township Code to create a no parking zone on the entirety of 13th Street. Excuse me. Entirety of Adams Avenue and Tanglewood Drive in Hamilton, in the Township of Hamilton. This is a public hearing. Any from the public like to speak? Yes, sir.
I'm a total novice at this, so I just wrote down a few notes.
Could you state your name for the record?
My name is Lester Ford. You want my address?
Yes.
706 Park Road. Okay. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I just feel like barring these trucks from from 13 back here is just not really very fair. I know I don't know them personally, but I've seen the guys that park them there. They live on Park Road. Where else are they going to park? There's nothing back there. I think there's only 3 reasons that maybe you guys could decide to make sure that they don't park there. One of them could be that it might cause pollution. There's no pollution back there. There's no oil. There's no trash. No nothing. Another one may be that you think it's an eyesore. There's no homes back there. It's just woods. I get past there every day, at least twice a day, and they're never parked in the road. They don't take up any room as far as that's concerned. In fact, one of the back parts of my property comes out right there where they're parked. You also might think it's congestion, but if you do, I think you ought to go look at Hudson Street over here. Hudson Street has cars going both ways. They have cars parked on the side of the road. If you're going to bar traffic from one street, maybe you ought to think about that. Now, to make sure that you understand, I don't advocate that because I think it would be unfair to the people that live on Hudson Avenue or Hudson Street. But if you're going to be fair with everybody, then you should be fair with these people that have a couple of trucks and they park them back here. As I say, I don't have a dog in this fight. What you do is up to you. but I just want you to know that I personally feel that what you're doing is very unfair.
Thank you. Would anybody else from the public like to speak?
Bruce?
Good evening. My name is Bruce McLeod. I reside at 991 McGarry Place, Mays Landing. I would dispute that that is a very quiet thoroughfare at this point in time. There is a business at the end of, I guess that would be Tanglewood, the roller rink. There's also a county park, which has become highly utilized, particularly during the warmer months. So, in a sense, that whole thoroughfare is a gateway into Mays Landing. I would also comment that I frequent that passageway several times a day. There is trash there. I can also report to you that I have seen the maintenance of commercial vehicles along that street. Not only are the trucks parked there, sometimes 3, the operators of the commercial vehicles also park their private vehicles there. It is also very close to a small bridge that was rehabilitated by this township in the recent past. The trucks park off the road. It's actually a compacted dirt surface, so there are possible environmental issues there with oil and other gasoline drainage. It is also very close to a waterway which that aforementioned bridge crosses. I have also seen these contested commercial vehicles drive down to the end of the road to the stop sign in front of the roller rink, and they perform a turnaround where they back up their vehicles different times of the day and night, sometimes when school buses are trying to make their passage and deliveries in that neighborhood. And also, if you would consider that you have a commercial enterprise operating on the side of the road. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Question, Mr. McLeod. Are you for or against the resolution?
I am in favor of the resolution. I would also point out one more thing. Besides the already mentioned commercial vehicles and private vehicles that park there to drive or operate the trucks, frequently further down the road, there are cars that are parked on the sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of the ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak on this?
Hi, Mark Cohen, 921 Morningside. I'm for the ordinance, but I did a little bit of research, and it looked like there's something already on the books indicating that commercial vehicles, you can't just park a commercial vehicle anywhere that you'd like, or any sort of vehicle like that. Meaning that, I have a boat. Can I go park my boat, wherever I want? Because I don't want to have it in my yard. I'll just go park it on the trailer a block over in the woods in front of someone else's house because I don't want to look at it. But I went on to E-code. I guess you guys have all of the ordinance and everything posted there, and I can't see. I'm getting old.
On my glasses.
50. No, I can actually zoom in, but there is. If you go on there and you just look up commercial, vehicles and parking, there's one that clearly dictates that, that's a use, or actually a violation of use. And I just wanted to bring that up. So I'm not too sure why we're creating a new ordinance for something that's already on the books that just needs to be enforced.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Morris? Yeah. Stay put. There is currently an ordinance that prohibits parking on either side of 13th Street. And 13th Street, if you go out here and you make a right, ends at the first S curve. And on paper, that little portion between that and the right curve is Adams Avenue. And then after you make the right curve, it's Tanglewood. I didn't know that when I drafted that ordinance many, many years ago, because they wanted to prohibit parking on 13th Street, but on paper, 13th Street ends at the first bend.
My whole life I called it 13th.
I know.
I still have a hard time.
We all did. You know?
Yeah.
So that ordinance was on the books, and it did prohibit it. Where they were parking was beyond that point. So that's what the purpose of this is.
Thanks for clarifying. Well, also one of my other thoughts were, though, if we make if an ordinance gets put on the books for just that particular area, aren't we opening up a can of worms? Because now they can just go park somewhere else, and you have to do an ordinance there. So that's why I was wondering, like this one ordinance that's already on the books. It sounds like it blankets the whole township. So I don't know if you open yourself up to some sort of legal liability by making an exclusion here. Who's to say that they can't go somewhere else, or someone else can't look at that as some sort of case law and say, well, you know, I'm going to park my vehicles here because now, you know, and then you have to go through this whole process again and create another ordinance for another street and so on and so forth. So I don't know why following what's on the books, you know, why that's not taking precedence here. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I agree with all three of the gentlemen who are in favor of this ordinance. And I'd like to also echo that, and Mr. Salmon, as he stated, there was an ordinance for 13th Street. So we're just kind of kicking the can down the road is what we did. And I do agree that we should have as many communities do, an overnight parking ordinance. Because if the exact same thing happened here before 13th Street, they went around the corner. And if the ordinance passes as written, they can go somewhere else. I think we all know that there are tractor trailers parking on several locations on Weymouth Road. There was a problem at Toys R Us, now Walmart, and the zoning officer is just chasing these tractor trailers all around. And it is a zoning issue. It's a commercial vehicles parked on public roads. I think what this ordinance does is give the police the ability to ticket, so that's just transferring or including police powers as well as zoning officers. So even though there isn't a townwide overnight parking ordinance, I think you should consider it. So I am in favor of this one, but you really need to expand it, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, sir. Mr. Link?
Mr. Mayor, Committee, Jim Link, 676 Park Road and 763 Park Road. My wife and I own the roller skating rink, which was mentioned in earlier testimony, and that rink has been there for more than 45 years. The park has been there for substantially longer than that, and the argument that, you know, someone is backing a tractor trailer up, it goes away because it's a matter of past practice. I am against this particular ordinance in that, for other reasons stipulated, I just think it's bad policy. Especially if there's an ordinance on the books already there, why go through this exercise? Number one. Number two, if you're going to go through this exercise, why don't you make it less capricious, arbitrary, and do a study about the entire township? Having been in your place, I understand that can be a big pain in the butt. However, it is more fair to everybody else that owns a commercial vehicle that wants to use township resources or property other than theirs that they might pay a fee for parking overnight. And again, because there is this ordinance on the book that Mr. Cohen alluded to, this particular ordinance, I think you ought to back it up. pull it off because it is capricious. It's aimed at one family, and they've been parking their truck there for 25 years. When I came down here and moved in at Mays Landing, and we bought the rink from Mr. and Mrs. Young, okay, mother and father-in-law, and we purchased a house on Park Road right down the street from the rink. They've been parking their trucks there. So again, it's a matter of past practice. There is no harm, okay? So why go through that effort? Pull that thing back, make it less capricious, make it less arbitrary, and more fair for everybody that's involved in the township. I don't know if there's been a traffic study, because in the preamble of the ordinance, you're talking about public safety, pedestrian safety, all this stuff, and it's nonsense because there's no sidewalk there, number one, for pedestrian safety. The trucks are off the cartway, so they don't present any problems with regard to emergency vehicles or any other access and egress, okay? Again, that's a flaw in the way the article or the ordinance is written. With all due respect to counsel, I'm not an attorney, but I would rather not have, if I was, sit on a bench across from the Honorable Bob Sandman in any argument in court. But, you know, from a policy point of view, I would urge that you back this up, reconsider it, give the entire township a once-over, let the planning board do what they do. Get the traffic engineer, get a report from the traffic engineer, get a report from the township engineer, get petitions from anybody in the neighborhood that might want to see this article, this ordinance passed. Because otherwise, I don't see an awful lot of support, okay, in terms of making policy to enable this particular ordinance. So I would just ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Charles Morrell, 979 Geary Place. So I am for this, and just for the years that I've been down here, which has been about 10 years now. In the beginning, they were not parking on that road. Since then, I know I can reiterate what everyone else has said as far as the problems and some of the issues there, but I have actually, they've had ladders working on the car, ladders in the middle of the road working on these cars. All right, I've had to drive around them or wait for them to get done. When snow plows were going down this road, that road was not plowed to standards, to passable standards at times, because the snow plow actually had to go around them. Now, the other issue is that there is police law, right, that you can't park the wrong way on the road. I have many pictures that I'll be glad to share with anyone, that these, I'm facing headlights while I'm coming down there in the dark. There are no lights on that road, all right? So the reflectors are in the back of the car for a reason, right? So you can see them. These cars, trucks, habitually are parked the wrong way. Now let's go one step further. On the weekends, trucks are gone. Their loads are left there, unattended, without markers, not safe. And so, again, I can reiterate a lot of other reasons as well, the pollution and just, but I've actually had people when I've given directions to, I'm in Geary, trying to get there, and they're like, I'm by the truck stop, where do I go? So with values of houses going down and everything, let's keep the end in mind here. That road was made so a thoroughfare, so we can get through, so we can go to our skating rink, so we can enjoy the state park, so we can enjoy things, get to people's houses. It was not to maneuver around trucks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else?
Hi, my name is Mark Waterhouse. I live on Morningside Drive, 909. I have a couple issues with it. First of all, until you've come around the bend at night in the dark and you've had, as Charles just said, a tractor trailer coming at you on the wrong side of the road, which has happened to us on that street with them parking on the wrong side. But that has been brought up before. My concern is this. My history is I own a fleet of 25 charter buses, and I pay a fortune to park in an industrial park because you're not allowed to park on the streets in the township where my company is. Can I bring my fleet here? Can I park them on the street? No. I mean, I'd love this outcome to be that I can just bring my buses here. Thank you very much.
I hear you. Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Move to close the public portion.
Second.
Motion and second, close the public portion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, the ayes have it. What's your pleasure, committee, or do you have any questions?
Well, from the consensus tonight of those who spoke, we have 2 against it and 5 for it. I kind of think that I agree with comments made by a lot of the folks that spoke tonight, that maybe it is something that needs to be addressed more township-wide in an ordinance. However, we have the opportunity tonight to pass this and then still proceed with fixing the problem further. So that's my feeling on it right now.
At the beginning of this meeting, I saw Mr. Benton here, and I motioned to him. He said, "No, I'm not going to be here and talk in front of this group." He told me that where he was parked before, he was told by Mr. Petoskey to park on that road. Now, whether Mr. Petoskey had, now he was a police chief at that time, so if he had that authority for him to suggest them to park there. They're a very hard-working family. They depend totally on the trucks that they have, and I'm not sure that I agree that they should be there, but I think somehow this community, it's the largest community township in all of New Jersey. Why can't we find a place, a commercial place for trucks to rent, to pay, just like the fellow with the buses? There are a lot of people who take their buses right home, and they park right in their driveway. And I know that the buses right over there on Route 40, it was very distressing for Misty Pines to see all those buses there. It is not a pleasant thing to see, but I see a dearth of opportunities for people to take their vehicle, park it somewhere, and pay to be there. I don't see it. Maybe I'm not sure. Do we have in our industrial park a place for vehicles of that nature to park and pay a rental? I don't think so. But we have a lot of land in our industrial park. We could make some money from it. But the thing is, give them a little bit of time to relocate, since I'm sure that this is going to pass. And, give them a little bit of time. They are a hard-working family. The boys were, mischievous as growing up. I know them personally. But they've turned around. They have a family. And I know Mr. Benton has a real problem with cancer. He was in the hospital 10 days having cancer treatment before we, talked about this. But still, he wants to abide by what he needs to abide by. But he was redirected by Chief Petoskey at that time. So he didn't just do it arbitrarily.
Okay. Anyone else? Good. I just want to make one comment. This change in this ordinance didn't come about because we didn't have enough on the agenda tonight. This is a product of a lot of people complaining about this situation. And, when it's one or two people, it's one thing. When it starts to become more and more people, people that live in that area are not happy with it. We made a very strong effort to take care of, with the help of the zoning officer and Mike and Phil, to take care of the situation out at Toys R Us. They were very cooperative. It's private property, so we can't force them to do anything. But with enough convincing, we were able to get them to, I mean, it was literally a truck stop out there. And it doesn't bode well for what we're trying to present this town as in our retail area. So it's not perfect yet, but we're still working on it. But all those trucks, the abandoned cars, the trailers that just get left for days on end, they're all gone now. So this is just one more piece that's going to move forward, where in Mays Landing, Hamilton Township, we don't want the trucks parked on the streets. We have other areas, and we're aware of it. Some of it's private property, and some of it's property owned by the state. So we have to go, we have to proceed with that as we can. So I just want everybody to understand that this isn't just something that we decided to do just to target one family. That's the furthest thing from the truth. So we have an ordinance on the table. What's your pleasure?
Well, I'd like to move the resolution or the ordinance.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Rita, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
No.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mayor Shanker?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 no, motion carries.
Thank you. Introduction of ordinances, public hearing to be held February 19, 2019. A, an ordinance 1896, 2019. An ordinance amending Chapter 170 of the Township Code to provide for an assessment of the fire prevention registration fees for agricultural structures. This is introduction of an ordinance. What's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to introduce that ordinance.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed. B, ordinance 1897, 2019, an ordinance adopting the redevelopment plan for the entirety of Township of Hamilton and a designated rehabilitation area. You want to give a, yeah, that'd be great, Phil, thank you. I know what it means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Committee members and many members of the public will recall that last fall, the Township Committee adopted a resolution designating the entirety of the township an area in need of rehabilitation. In October of last year, a proposed redevelopment plan for the entire township was submitted for introduction, did get reviewed by the planning board. There were some corrections that the planning board wanted as a result of that review, and for that reason that ordinance didn't move forward, because there wouldn't have been enough time to reintroduce it at the end of last year. I think basically we just ran out of time. It would have been second meeting in December when it would have been introduced. And again, the redevelopment plan itself is, for lack of a better term, a boilerplate plan that just checks all the boxes that you're required to do as part of the redevelopment plan designation. It does not make any changes to zoning. It's just that we have a redevelopment plan. Existing zoning will be in place, but it does allow the township to work with property owners to undertake site-specific redevelopment projects. And also, in conjunction with this, very shortly, I know Mr. Maley will be meeting with the Administration Committee about amending the tax abatement ordinance so that it would allow for whatever expansion to the abatement program the committee chooses to do, but that'll be following up in the very near future. Ordinarily, if this was just the first time that this was coming to the committee, it would have to be referred to the planning board for their review and recommendation. But as I said before, planning board's already looked at it, those comments have been incorporated so that it can be just, I guess, if introduced, public hearing at the next regular meeting.
Okay, very good.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance
I'll second it.
1897, 2019.
I have a question. Is this to be okay by the Pinelands?
Yes, it will. They will have
So
to.
once it passes here?
Once it's passed, it'll be sent up to Pinelands. And if it's like anything in the past, since it really doesn't affect the current zoning or anything like that, as you're aware, they sometimes do their reviews and issue approvals because it doesn't affect the Pinelands CMP.
Okay, does this mean a place like Consumer Square and all those other places that are along the corridor are to be considered, whatever it is, rehab?
They're in the rehabilitation area. As far as anything specific for individual sites, that would be subject to separate applications. And as far as the abatement and exemption, at this point, since I haven't seen a draft of the proposed ordinance, I don't know what it'll affect as far as that.
That's the next step.
That's the next step, correct.
Yeah, I was wondering what an example would be. Where specifically, what would be deemed a rehab area?
Well,
can you give me an example?
At this point, the entire township is a rehabilitation area. Prior to this, the village commercial along Main Street and Mays Landing was designated an area in need of rehabilitation. And in conjunction with that, the abatement ordinance established standards for improvements and projects there. The industrial park had previously been designated a rehabilitation area. The abatement ordinance had standards for improvements there. So
But we're doing the whole town.
we're doing the whole town. So there'll require some modification to that ordinance. And again, as a rehabilitation area, there could be situations where a specific site may need to have basically almost a site-specific redevelopment plan. They may need some other zoning modifications, be it setbacks or lot coverage, et cetera. That would be covered under an individual redevelopment plan.
Now, in your studies, have you found that this action that we would take tonight will, encourage more development in our area and bring, lots of...
It certainly puts us on an even footing with the other communities in the area. Egg Harbor Township is very active in this. Galloway has been very active in redevelopment designations, rehabilitation designations. So, again, it puts us back up on even footing with them from that potential financial perspective.
Okay.
But then again, we have other assets that they don't, which, hopefully help us more.
We're not as much in debt as they are. Okay, very good, thank you.
You have a motion and a second on the floor. I would ask for a roll call vote on this particular type.
I will, thank you. Rita?
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mayor Schenker?
Yes.
All yes and introduced.
Number 6, awards, bids, contracts, change orders. I see none. Consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve items A through D and F, pulling item E out for a little further discussion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
A motion and second. All those in favor, do you have any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. So E is a resolution confirming the report of property maintenance actions taken by the township is a correct and direct cost thereof shall be discharged against the dwellings of the lands pursuant in section 238-5 of the Township Code, 5908 7th Street, block 805, lot 5. Can Mike or Phil expand on this a little bit?
The township went through the process of demolishing these through the
Yes.
board, the property maintenance board, and through its enforcement power. We went out to bid. We had to have specifications drafted, so this bill includes the engineering fees of about $4,000, and it includes 50% of the demolition costs for each house. So it's $25,150 for each house. One was fire damage,
Right.
and one was deterioration for years.
Okay.
But they've both been demolished and cleaned up and bills paid.
And we then put a lien on the property?
And we put a lien on the property.
All right. Anyone have any questions?
I was just curious, do we have any feel for when we'll get that money back?
No, there is someone did express interest in one of these properties about paying some of the liens, but not sure when it would go through.
Okay.
I'll move item E.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Personnel. Motion to grant authorization to advertise for a full-time temporary laborer.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do we need a roll call for this, Bob? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. B, resolution appointing Detective Sergeant Chris Garrick as an additional Township of Hamilton Humane Officer contingent upon successful completion of the PTC Humane Law Enforcement Officer Training for Police. Any questions?
Yeah, can I ask,
Sure, go ahead, Rob.
how many officers of that ilk do we need?
This would be 3.
This will be 3?
This would be this would be the second. The next one on the agenda would be the third.
Okay, so what's our ultimate goal?
Chief, would you like to speak on this?
They have.
The state recently revised all the statutes that pertain to animal cruelty and have shifted that enforcement function from the SPCA and shifted that to law enforcement. So that's another duty that now we have to do. And the prosecutor's office has assigned an assistant prosecutor to do just prosecutions for these types of offenses. And we're going to be required to have a detective sergeant, a detective, and an officer. Officer McElry's already been authorized. So essentially, we're going to have 3 people total. The more involved that a case gets, it will get kicked off to the detective bureau, and then they would pick it up, which is why we're going to have a detective and detective sergeant certified also.
Did the state reimburse us for the cost of this new requirement?
No, they forgot about that part.
Yeah, state mandate, right.
And we don't truly know the actual volume that's going to be involved with this, because a lot of these calls went directly to the SPCA in the past, and now we're going to be getting them.
Well, statistically, you'll track it and put it on.
Oh,
your
absolutely,
report.
yeah.
Thank you.
So will this require them to testify in court for a prosecution?
Yes.
In that case, you need a roll call.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. We have a resolution.
Have a motion that has not been seconded yet.
I
Okay.
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Rita, can we get a roll call?
Mr. Kishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
And Mayor Schenker?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. C, resolution appointing Detective Greg Blouse as an additional Township of Hamilton Humane Law Officer contingent upon the successful completion of the PTC Humane Law Enforcement Officer Waiver Training for Police.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Rita, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Kishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
And Mayor Schenker?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Thank you. Approvals. A, minutes of the January 22nd, 2019 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. B, payroll and bills. Bill list total $6,346,604.70.
So moved.
Second?
We have motion and second. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, Rita, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Gishard?
Yes.
Mr. Kurtz?
Yes.
Mrs. Link?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mayor Shanker?
Yes.
All yes and carried.
Move on to our reports. Mr. Administrator,
Nothing to add to my written report.
okay? Can I ask you for an update? We had some work that was to be done at the Lundy Building. Where are we at with that?
Yes, Phil, can you give an update on that? Go get it.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Solicitor,
I have nothing to report, and I would remind you that when I have nothing to report, it's a very good thing.
it's a good, yeah, I concur. Mr. Engineer, you always have something to report,
do.
so let's have at
Yeah,
it.
Mayor and committee, I have a report dated February 4th. First item is the road program. I want to give you an update. I think at the last meeting, I mentioned that we're going to suspend the concrete work, the asphalt paving because of the weather. However, for safety reasons, I've asked Lambert Construction to go back to work on the line striping, like the stop bar at Babcock Road, some of the other crosswalks. You know, if the weather's 40 degrees and rising, I've asked him to go back out to work for safety reasons on line striping. Main Street and Linwood Avenue. I was pretty pleased 2 weeks ago that I thought that Verizon had solved the problem at the seepage coming out of the manhole on Main Street by Linwood Avenue. They did a lot of work. We thought we solved it. About 3 or 4 days after that, it started seeping again, and I've been in contact with some of the neighbors. So I quickly got back on, connection with Verizon. I'm in contact with their engineering department. They're coming down next Wednesday to meet with me and Brett. They've given me their engineering drawings. There's other conduits that are coming into this manhole. We don't know without opening up, looking at this and figuring this out, but we do recognize that we have a storm inlet about 25 feet away on Linwood Avenue, and we're going to evaluate if it makes sense to tie just a small drain line in from that manhole that's seeping water out the top to the drain, to the storm inlet that's on Linwood Avenue. I know that disrupts some of the paving that was done on Main Street, but that's more or less at the edge of the roadway and in front of Linwood Avenue. The other thing that I want to have them do is that manhole needs to be reset. I know Sue Marks has mentioned to me a few times, she could feel it in her house. When cars and trucks hit that manhole, it's a little bit shattering for her. So I could have them reset that manhole. So if you give me some time, I will correct this problem.
Okay, thank you.
I have on my list is 32nd Avenue. As part of a road program, I think in late November, we paved 32nd Avenue. We put in a storm system in the shoulder of the road. It's a stone trench, 4 foot by 4 foot with a 24-inch perforated pipe. The first time it rained, right after that system was put in, it worked perfectly, about an inch or an inch and a half rainfall. The second time it rained, there was an issue with Atlantic Electric's property that the water, our system is at the lowest point on 32nd Avenue. Atlantic Electric has that very shallow basin on 32nd, and there's a connector pipe that goes to a larger basin in the back of their site. 2 times in the last 6 or 7 years I've been involved here that we've requested Atlantic Electric to go do some remediation work. Their basins aren't functioning. I don't know if it's because of the high water table. We've had 68 inches of rainfall, where 42 is, are normal for the year. But I've been in contact with Ken Mosca twice now. I have a meeting set up with Ken next week. He's bringing his facilities manager there. I've spoken to Pete Dolce, who designed the system. and I've been talking to Marge Wilson, who's the manager for Chancellor's Place, because what happens is when Atlantic Electric Basin doesn't function properly, it overflows onto 32nd Avenue.
Right.
When our system isn't taking that water, it's overflowing on a Chancellor's Place. So I'm going to stay with this. I'll figure out a solution.
What about the basin to the right of the pumping station there? You never see water in
It's
there, and it
completely,
belongs to...
you know, and I have the drawings.
Sure.
Pete Dulce sent me the drawings. I'm trying to figure out what, that basin is always dry.
Yep. Yeah.
There's a pipe that goes across the street. Maybe there's the inlet is clogged. I don't know, but I'm going to take a look at that too. And that's a deep basin. That's, when you drive down 32nd, it's about 7 or 8 feet deep, but it's always dry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, you know, right now I'm just gathering all the drawings. I'm going to take a look at it. Next week I meet with Ken Mosca and Joan Ballinger, and we're going to, you know, they're committed to solving this. They said they'll do whatever work needs to be done.
Steve, but the larger basin at Atlantic Electric seems to be on a higher grade than the lower one, which when it fills up, it doesn't drain that way. It seems to erupt across the roadway.
It does.
There has to be a mechanism that allows it to move into the larger basin. And I don't know what they're going to do or how they're going to redesign it, but that existed for quite a while.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at the original drawings. I'm going to see what the original grades and elevations are on the stormwater basins. I know about 2 years ago, when I took a look at it and asked to get involved, the pipe had been silted up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not the best design. Everything is if it's off by a little bit, the pipe gets silted up, a little vegetation grows at the entrance to the pipe. It just, everything backs up to 32nd and then over to Chancellor's Place. So I'm going to spend a lot of time and make sure, you know, this gets resolved best I can.
Thank you.
Under construction projects, just a quick list of Buffalo Pike is still working on punch list items. Starbucks is scheduled to open the middle of March is what they're telling me. Outback is progressing fairly, not as quick as we would like. Artist Walk, they're on a regular basis building houses out there, 1 or 2 or 3 a month. Wells Springs Church had a pre-construction meeting on Friday. That's at the intersection of Babcock and Mays Landing Summers Point Road. That's a church that seats 200. They're going to go to construction in about 2 weeks. They're going to start clearing that lot.
Steve, I had a question on that Wellspring. If I remember correctly, during the application before the planning board, I just want to make sure we remember this, that they did agree to do curbing all the way down to where it turns into the industrial park.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Are they going to run their line that way?
The sewer line is going to go to, on Babcock Road, it's going to connect into where the gym is, up around the corner there.
Yeah.
Where the,
Okay.
and Hamilton Green, I don't know if you've been on Cologne Avenue, they've done a lot of clearing.
Yeah,
That's
I've
a pretty
seen it.
large development.
They're going, what, a couple of hundred units back there?
220 units.
Wow.
Now, is that 4 and 5, or is that just,
It's everything.
okay, that's all they're gonna, that's all they have, the rights to build, okay.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Township committee members, Judy?
I'm sad to hear that they're clearing all those trees away. Trees do absorb a lot of water, and a lot of our problems with water have come from a lot of clearing. But we're supposed to take care of that through the detention. I just wanted to say that I'm very sad that Mr. Yanello has passed away. Mr. Yanello at one time was a powerhouse in this community. He's one of the pillars of the community. However, in the last 5 or 6 years, he, hasn't been really doing that well. And but I think he's sold every piece of property in this area. He was telling me which ones he sold and, so on and so forth. And, I just think you know, we'll be missing him and his expertise. Not that he's been too current at this point, but he really loved this community, and I think we should, you know, at least give a moment of silence or a little prayer for his family, because he was a good guy. Well, he was the president of Shore Memorial. He was the president of Rotary Club. He was a lot of things in this community. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Judy. John?
No, the only comment I have is that the president of the Rotary Club now, Dan Snodgrass, is putting together a plan to address, have people come in and send in questions to possibly be addressed by someone from our office concerning the redevelopment and the rehabilitation area. As there's so many questions out there, a lot of people have a hard time figuring out the difference between the two. And I understand that after a meeting that the mayor and the deputy mayor have on Wednesday, there'll be more information coming to light to help facilitate a public forum where we can explain this better to the residents, which I think is long overdue. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Roger?
I think the question was asked before about a few, Phil, that what does the redevelopment designation do for the community? And I think it's an incentive for people who are looking to either fix up, expand, if it's possible, and go through the proper channels, and give certain incentives from the community. I tell you, the biggest issue we face in this community now is sustainability, in light of the fact that of the 68,133 acres we own in this township, half of them are income producing, and the other half, because they're designated in the environmental zone or public, it's almost heaving. So the incentive has to come that we've got to incentivize a lot of businesses here. It starts with the old Wheaton on Mill, looks at the racetrack, it looks at the property down where Zabers used to be, and that whole corridor from Cologne Avenue all the way down has got to be developed in the right way. The other concern that I have, and I was going to ask you, Steve, and I'll ask you now, is when we finally get finished with our rainfalls, are we going to have to relook at a lot of these basins that are continually full? Or are we going to give them enough period of time so that they perk, if they can perk?
They're obligated to send in a report once a year, and I think we need to take a look at all of them. I mean, even under extreme situations, they have to function.
Well, the one basin I've always been, I always watch is the one by Walmart, which, you know what they spend in there, they spend a fortune.
Always, right.
We watch them go and dig it out and fill it and fill it. That place always seems to do very well. I mean, some of the others, like behind Consumer Square and behind Wrangleboro Square back there, they're like lakes back there. And I wonder at some point, will we ever be able to get them to perk the way they're supposed to, or even get them to give us a report of which direction they're going to take with them?
They just signed a contract with an engineering firm to do an evaluation on...
Of all the basins?
Of the basin behind BJ's.
Good. Yeah. That one's a big one back there. The other thing I was concerned about is they can become attractive if they're not fenced in. And if they can't get them, I mean, once we get our report, we've got to explain to them what their obligation is so that they understand it, and they know that with the amount of people that shop in those areas and drive around the back and everything, there's real concern there. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Ronnie?
I'd like to report on a good deed. The Home Depot identified the VFW here, or looked at the VFW here, and decided that was a good organization to provide some building material to. They have done that, and we are able to put wallboard around the main meeting area. The wallboards are going to be put in by the VFW members, but that was a very good deed on the part of Home Depot. We appreciate it. Also, I'm curious, with the wild weather we've had, what impact that's going to have on our streets with all the water and the changes in temperature. I just wonder, how badly that's going to tear our streets up.
Well, we'll be looking at that. I mean, the road program, right, John? In terms of getting on that, we've got a lot to look at. And we'll have to take a relook at many of them that are damaged and sort of prioritize what has to be done.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you, Rodney. Just briefly want to touch on what John had said earlier about the rehabilitation program. We have a meeting later this week, and it's been a while since we introduced this, and I think in the beginning we talked about how this was going to take some time to get it through all the channels that it has to go through. And we are now at the point where we're going to get more involved with specifics of how this is all going to work. Everything that's been done up to this point is basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, more of a generalization of what our intent is, and now we can sit back and say this is how we're going to handle these certain things. I didn't want to have a public forum until we had all that information. There's still a lot that needs to be discussed. I think that we have a pretty good idea in the direction we want to go here. One of the most, and Judy had asked about, is there, how do you see this helping? And I believe I told this story before, but I spoke to the gentleman who's in charge of construction for Lidl Supermarkets. And when he left, I called him when they left. And he said one of the most important things they're looking for is tax abatements. And they're not the only company. This is how these companies think now. And I think that, we are a little bit behind the 8 ball according to some of the other towns around us, but I think the timing is also very good for us to take advantage of this situation and get some good quality businesses in this area. One of the reasons why I felt it was important that we do the entire township is that we don't limit ourselves. That we can take each situation as it comes, whether it's a residential situation, which that's going to have a lot of discussion on how we handle that and what qualifies for this, but more importantly, some of the sporadic commercial areas that we like to see be a little more developed, a little nicer. Up in 40 and 50, there's a lot of area in there that can be redeveloped, also other areas of the township. So we have full intention to bring this to the public before we move forward with it so everybody can understand it. We can answer all your questions. We're just not quite there yet, so please be patient. I have one other thing here tonight. It's more of a public service announcement. Lewis Bay Second Annual Future Municipal Leaders Scholarship Competition. The New Jersey State League of Municipalities and I have an excellent scholarship opportunity for the high school juniors and seniors in Hamilton Township. We have teamed up to offer $1,000 scholarships through the Lewis Bay Second Future Municipal Leaders Scholarship Competition. It's a statewide scholarship competition, centers on the theme, what my municipal government does best. And it seeks to advance the virtues of elected and volunteer members in a municipal government. Full details on the application process and contest are being sent to local high schools and are available on our website. I hope to see many young adults representing our township in the future Municipal Leader Scholarship competition. So if anybody has any questions about this, please, if you can't find the information, reach out to Lisa in our Township Hall, and she'll be more than happy to help you. That's all I have. Excuse me. I want to open the floor to public comment. Ms. Marks.
Hi, Sue Marks, 5728 Main Street. Mays Landing. There's two things. Number one, I take a lot of pride in Main Street. As John knows, we pick up trash, right? A lot. And there have been a place next door to me. They have several apartments there, and there have been a mattress and a couch outside welcoming people to Main Street and Mays Landing for 3.5 weeks. And I was just hoping, I had left recycle schedules from the ACUA and all their mailboxes and stuff when they first went to a renting situation at the house, but to no avail. So I just don't know, can somebody enforce, or so they don't leave things laying out on Main Street, furniture and stuff like that for like a month? It doesn't look nice. That's one comment. Another thing is the Green Team is working with St. Vincent de Paul School. We've established 8 raised beds for gardening, and we're going to do, we are doing composting, and it'll be for the edification of the kids as far as composting goes and gardening goes, and as the spring comes. And I was hoping if you drive by and you see this going on, take a look, stop and see what we've been doing. It's been a very terrible winter, and so I'm hoping as spring comes it'll start looking a lot better. But we're going to ask for your support too, just to, like, confidence type thing, you know, positive. See it as a positive force on Main Street. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, Sue? Were you able to get all the compost you needed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, I think right now Dave is dealing with Wawa, asking for coffee grounds and stuff like that, so that's where we're at. Okay.
So is this mattress and stuff that you're talking about, is that there now?
Yes,
or?
tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be picked up. They put it out in the beginning of January, after the date when it would have been picked up.
First of the month.
But it's been there.
So it now sits?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Thanks.
That happens
Okay.
a lot.
All right. Anyone else from the public?
Other things out there.
Thank you very much. My name is Carolyn Downs-Holtzen, and I have a property at 76 Chancellor Park Drive. The first time I met you all was back in August of 2017, about 1.5 years ago. And I came in because there was a tremendous flooding problem. We talked about drainage coming across 32nd Avenue and actually creating a river along the walking path, the jogging path that's behind Chancellor Park Drive. And at that time, I was reassured that all due attention was going to be paid to this and it would be fixed. That was 1.5 years ago, okay? We have a lot of water drainage issues, and the Homeowners Association has formed a committee. I'm not the only one here, by the way, from Chancellor Park Drive. And we're trying to address them, but there are a couple of things that stand out. When I go back in the records that are available online from different committee meetings, I'm going back to 2008, 2007, that identify water problems in these same areas. A number of people have promised Atlantic Electric, Mr. Filippone, in 2013, they asked for permission to put a roof over their trucks, and you address a drainage issue then, back in 2013, that was 6 years ago, that there were drainage problems. It hasn't gotten better, it's gotten worse. Now, I don't know what the solution is. I know it's not an easy one, and I know you folks have a hard job. We are probably not the only area in Mays Landing that is having trouble with a wealth of water. And I say that because I suspect people in other parts of the country, Paradise, California comes to mind, that would have done anything for this much water during a certain period of time. We have too much, and we need to effectively manage it, and that hasn't been done. There are a lot of ordinances on the books, both yours as a township, Atlantic County, the entire state of New Jersey. There's an awful lot of regulations, and it looks like they're being paid lip service, and when push comes to shove, nothing happens. Right now, I'm complaining as a fellow citizen that essentially Atlantic Electric has been dumping polluted water because it's not clean roof runoff. It's from a parking lot. There are no drainage inlets that I could see on Route 40 from Walmart all the way down, which means that whole section behind Chancellor Park, there's nowhere for the water to go other than down 32nd Street and off of Mays Landing Village. And we're sitting there and we're actually trying to look at this to identify what the problem is. We got too much water, all right? What can we do about that? And we don't want to just throw money and dig a basin, because if the water's not getting in there, it's not going to drain out. As far as I can determine, it looks like all the homeowners associations are responsible for their basins. And it looks like when the developer left, there were release of maintenance bonds contingent upon a 10-year plan for maintenance and funding of said maintenance that was supposed to be turned over to the township. Do you folks have any of those from any of the homeowners association?
If I could, I researched that today with the clerk's office, and there are no maintenance bonds on Chancellor's. They were all released from an engineer from 2013 before my time.
And I'm not interested. Okay. I don't want to assign blame.
No. And I don't want to say.
But I
want to solve. I want to help you solve. I want to help.
Right,
you solve.
and that's what I'm getting at, because I'm not interested in assigning blame. But basically, those plans were to be released. They were denied release in 2012, and I got to tell you, you guys got a lot of information online. Those bonds were released in 2013, contingent, and this is from your minutes. Authorized release of the stormwater management system maintenance guarantee. Those were bonds. There were 4 of them. I think they were with Deutsche Bank. If I'm going too long, let me just tell me. But they were contingent upon the developer funding or otherwise guaranteeing a maintenance and inspection program for the system for not less than 10 years, identifying the entity charged with responsibility for annual inspections and completion of necessary maintenance, and a method of financing the program in a fashion acceptable to the township. Now, I'm assuming, going by Robert's rules and the way everything is legally formatted, that that wasn't just a handshake and the homeowners association is going to take care of it. I don't know where those documents are, and I don't know that anybody does. I was able to find online, and again, this might be more recent, there's actually a bunch of forms for storm management, stormwater management, and how you check the drainage basin. Because here's my point. Homeowners associations, just regular people, if they're not going to be engineers. How would they know what they were supposed to do and when they were supposed to do it? And you can say that everybody's supposed to submit a yearly report, but if nobody's responsible for obtaining it, and if that isn't enforced, what's the point? Right now, we have a problem, and there's at least 3 parts to it. One is the river that flows when it rains from Atlantic Electric. Going back to 2013, there's the river that flows and forms behind Chancellor Park Drive. That's number 1. Number 2, not all the basins seem to be draining as they are supposed to, and we're actually going to do, look at them on a more frequent basis. But the other thing is that if the water isn't getting to the basin and it's just in the street, right now we have a problem with I believe there's a rupture of the asphalt due to water freezing because a drain is blocked. Now, the responsibility for the street drains, the storm drains, do they belong to the homeowners association? My understanding was that the streets were dedicated to the township. So who is supposed to clean out the storm drains? And again, this is not a blame game. This is, in order to make sure the job gets done, I got to know whose job it is. Does anybody know whose job it is?
Well, if they're public streets, it's the township's responsibility.
Okay, then who would I call and say, look, we have a problem, we have a lot of deciduous trees. Who would I call to get our storm drains clean? Does the township have a schedule that they maintain? Who would I talk to about that?
You could call me, you could call Brett Knoll.
You could call me.
Or you could call Mike.
But our storm drains are inspected and maintained on an annual basis. So if they're ours, they've been inspected and maintained.
Are those records maintained anywhere?
Yes.
We just were audited by the state on
Just
it.
audited, and there's a 800, I don't know the exact number, 700 storm inlets that Brett Knoll
Okay, so,
every year does an inspection. And
Okay.
there's a log when he did the
right,
inspection.
so just so we're, and again, it's not a blame game, we're trying to solve a problem here. And I can't go up to Atlantic Electric and knock on their door and say, look, you're flooding a community. That's the way I identified the problem back in 2017. And I really thought that it would be resolved. I know you did some work there, but it didn't solve the problem. And I think that's where there's a breakdown because there's no follow-through. And the basin, and you all know, the basin down 32nd Avenue on the left-hand side of the road as you're going toward Atlantic Avenue, that's dry.
Never see any water.
No, and yet it's being flooded, and I don't know how much the flooding, and we have neighbors who have sump drains, multiple sump drains in their basement that are pumping out water all the time. And I've got Mr. Newsom is mentioned in a meeting back in 2010 or 2011. They've complained about this, and it just seems like nothing has happened. And I'm kind of shocked.
Okay. I want to help you.
Please, I want the help.
I look forward to solving drainage problems where I can. And
You promised me you would in 2017.
I thought I did. I mean, in 2017, I went out, evaluated it. Atlantic Electric hired a contractor. They removed the silts, removed some of the debris that was causing some of the problem. They did some grading on the basin. I thought the problem was solved. I thought the problem was solved.
Previous year in history.
Yeah.
I understand that. We got almost 70-some inches of rain. But here's the deal. It might not get better. And I don't think I don't just want to look at this and say I don't want it to flood. I care about our community, and we as a homeowners association are talking about sharing whatever we find out with other homeowners association. And I think you should really look at this, because if they're responsible, but they don't know what they're supposed to do, because you got to look at the storm drain and make sure that that's patent, that's open and capable of receiving water. The other thing is you got to send somebody through something.
They get jetted out, yes.
To make sure that the pipe is intact, that it's not cracked, it hasn't moved, because they depend on a certain grade to function appropriately. And before you silt up, dig up the silt and everything, make sure that water can get there, because guess what? You can dig up that one on 32nd Avenue, nothing's going to happen. It's empty all the time, and that's the problem. So, go ahead.
Did you know that the association hired an engineer recently to evaluate the stormwater? He's been doing annual reports, and in there he gives you a recommendation of how to maintain your own basins.
It addresses the bottom of the area to allow for filtration, because that's why you can't just dig a hole, and drill right through, because the whole point is to filter out the pollutants, which brings me back again to what's flooding our neighborhood from Atlantic Electric, because that's all from 32nd Avenue, their parking lot, and Route 40. And on the other side, does anybody know anything about a storm pipe or something that was put into, I think Urbana owns that property, behind, it's like right off Route 40. It's on 32nd, part of it's on 32nd Avenue. It's, in one of the designs, it shows a restaurant, I don't know if that ever happened. I went looking, I found a very large hole, a very large mound of dirt. So people have been back there. They've been, not recently, it doesn't look like. There was at least a 4 or 5 foot deep hole that probably about the size of this area right in here. And it had a black corrugated drain, like a 6-inch drainage pipe, and what looked like might be a cave or a hole or something. I didn't inspect it further, but it looks like something was done back there. I don't know what it is. I don't know if anybody does. I couldn't find anything about it. We're trying to figure out why that area is so wet, why Chancellor Park has all these drainage issues. And if water is coming in from other areas, that could be part of the explanation. But at this point, I called the street departments and asked them to clean the storm drains, and then we're going to work further. And then, but it's just this has taken too long, and it's like, is there any move to? Can anybody think of some kind of structure to do that says, look, this is what? Because those pipes have to be looked at, and there's a whole process. And I know you tell me we've looked at that, and we've looked at the drainage from Atlantic Electric, and yet not to have done anything in 10 years, that kind of.
Steve, is the electric company's drainage basin the primary source of the problem that exists now? And as you were talking, I was thinking about it. The electric company spends a lot of money doing maintenance along the tree lines to keep the trees out of their wires and everything so that they don't have a problem. It would behoove them to take a good look at the problem they have here in this neighborhood. And if they want to continue to be good neighbors, they've got to not only address this problem, but they got to investigate it further than what they have. Look, as a layperson, I could tell you that basin, and that's always been a pet peeve of mine, was too high than the other one that was there, and it never had water in it. And the basin the lady's referring to, I never seen water in there in all the years I cut through there.
Never seen it either.
And that's unfortunate because nothing's worse.
There's an interesting irony in that, maybe you can use it. Atlantic Electric is now part of Exelon. Exelon in January received international recognition for their environmental program.
Interesting.
That floods a neighborhood community. Because that was their response to, if you remember, in 2017, I said, has anybody talked to Atlantic Electric? And Atlantic Electric's response per someone was, they told me it was functioning as it was designed. And my statement was, oh great, they designed a basin to deliberately flood a residential community.
We've heard that all too often through all the developments in town. As long as it was built to design, the fact that it doesn't function 100% or 50%, there's nothing you can do about it. That's a problem. But there should be something you should be able to do about it. And unfortunately, you can go through many of the subdivisions in this township and have a similar problem.
Well, then I think as a township, maybe that's something we really need to look at. Like I understand that a lot of these were designed to standards that were set years ago. All right? I understand that we've taken down a lot of trees. You also have, in New Jersey, you have Rutgers. A couple of them have agricultural. They'll come out and do programs, I'm guessing, because this issue is statewide. But right now, I want to solve the one in our backyard. And if Atlantic Electric, they have to do something about that basin, because I can complain about it according to township rules. That's a nuisance, and it's a danger because those are polluted waters.
I would like the chance to go out, look, I have this meeting scheduled with Atlantic Electric. If I could stay in communication with you, I would like to solve it. I thought the problem was solved last time. I really did.
Right.
And I speak to Marge often.
Marge is here,
I wanna
and
solve
we
this
have.
problem. I really do.
Right, and we have some neighbors here who, their basements are flooded all the time.
Yeah.
And it's going on too long.
We've had a lot of rainfall, but that's no excuse, believe me. If I could solve the Atlantic Electric Basin,
That would be a
issue,
significant start, because
that
we're,
would be a start. And I would like that chance. I'd like to think that it was designed properly many years ago. But what concerns me is that the basin that's dry,
The clay.
I'd like. the
somebody's got to
opportunity-
send down if you got a dry basin, first thing you do is, you don't look at the bottom of the basin. You look through the pipe. What if it's closed off? What if it's sealed?
There's a pipe that crosses the street on 32nd. Maybe the water, maybe it's clogged, impacted, maybe the water's not getting there.
Maybe it's broke.
But like I said, this started 2 weeks ago, speaking to Marge, and I started gathering the drawings, scheduling a meeting.
It started before 2 weeks ago.
You're right.
I'm not going to let you off for that one.
No,
It's
don't let
like,
me
no,
off.
it's gotten worse. And I think that's
Steve,
the lesson. If you don't fix it, it's going to get worse.
when are you meeting with Atlantic Electric?
The week of 13th.
Let me know when and where, I'll be there.
Okay.
All right?
We have some other neighbors?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Bring this to a close.
Hi, my name is Joelle Bridgers. I have been a resident of Chancellor from the beginning, fifth house there, 2003. We have had issues, and it's on record, with the township since 2003. When Nancy Rainbow was here, she was actually, she's my ex-husband's aunt. She got very involved. She had the vice president of U.S. Homes, Lennar, come down, walk my property. There was several homes, well, 5 of us homes, that were literally underwater, to the point where for 2 summers I couldn't use my backyard. It was literally underwater. I had no grass, nothing. My basement, my sub pump has been going off since 2003. I've been through 5 sub pumps. I don't buy the cheap ones because they go like that. I've had many floods in my basement. I cannot finish my basement because it's just going to flood. This has been going on too long. It's not just a couple of years. It's not 2006, 2003, and this township has known about it. It's on record. We should go back to 2003. Nancy did have them do some improvements to the houses that were built at the time, such as put drains around, like pipes underground around some of our properties that drain out into the street. That didn't work, so they had a dry well put in. Dry well was kind of a shabby one. It wasn't really a good dry well. It helped for almost a year. My sub pump would go out to the dry well. After the backed up and went into my basement and flooded again. I have a 1,400 square foot basement, and when you go down there in a little more than ankle deep, that's a lot of water, So I have my sub pump now being directed to the pipe that goes out into the street. It hasn't stopped since I moved in. It's now creating issues, safety issues in our neighborhood. Yes, we've had a lot of water, it's nonstop rain, but now it's freezing. And with that rain, our streets are now freezing over, and it's gonna cause an accident. I had to call in 2 times to the police station on Saturday night to just put cones, the first time I asked to see if I can get salt put out there. And they said, yep, no problem, we'll have somebody from the township go put salt in particularly the intersection of Princeton and Chancellor. I have a SUV with really big tires, and my car, I thought it was the Titanic going down and hitting an iceberg. It was that bad. The ice is about that high. And this is all in the middle of the road. You can't go around it. So a couple hours went by. One of the neighbors, we have a Facebook page, one of the neighbors went live with it, showing this iceberg thing. I was like, that's it, let me call again. I called the police again, and Sergeant Groff, I think it is, I spoke to, and he said that, listen, there's nothing really we can do. We can't get the township out there to salt tonight. I'm like, I understand that, but now it's a safety hazard. My son was in an Uber, and the Uber driver literally slid across. That could have been bad if he hit something or someone. I said, listen, can we put cones out there? He said, I'll send an officer. He sent an officer. Officer actually came to my house and said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how bad it was. He said, I'm putting cones out, not just there, but I found other areas too, which was awesome because it's alerting, our residents to go slower and take caution. We need this fixed. Not only is it safety, not only is our insurance, all of our, I know my insurance company threatened me a couple times that they were going to cancel me. Our property values, I'm a realtor, so I know real estate. Our property values, who wants to live in a community that floods all the time? We need this fixed, and we need it fixed now. I'm done with it. This has got to be, now. I understand you said you've been working on it. Carolyn said, she was here in 2017. It just made it worse. And if somebody does buy that lot on 32nd and 40, we're done. We're underwater at that point. Because not only the trees are gone, but now you have and I've seen the minutes from 2007, I think January 18th, 2007, where the board approved a strip mall to go in there and their water to go into our basin. Are you kidding me? This is just absurd. So whether things have to be moved around and whatnot, and we have had maintenance checks every year like we're supposed to. The township makes us do it. We pay for it out of our homeowners association fees. The drains, I want to see the inspections of the drains in our neighborhood because I've never seen somebody in the 16 years I've been out there inspecting any drains. They've always been clogged. And if I knew that I thought they belonged to us, I would have called the township many times over about those drains. They don't do anything, those drains. I don't even know where they go. Probably our basins that are clogged. So this has got to be fixed. It's got to be resolved. You have 150 homes in there. And like I said, it's depreciating the values. It could injure somebody. And it's causing the homeowners a lot of grief. They're losing things as far as floods, in their basements. I know I shouldn't have to, every time electricity goes out and I'm at work, have to worry about running home to make sure my sub pump is working. And this is in the summertime too. It could be a drought and my sub pump is still going. So it's not just a basin issue, there's many issues like Carolyn had said. We got to figure it out, and we did hire an engineer to test different areas to find out what is exactly going on, not just the basins, but we got to figure out together how to resolve this, and we got to do it now.
So your question is, what's our follow-up? Right? What do we do from here?
Good follow-up. We need to get this resolved.
All right.
I've spent lots of time and money just on myself. You think about electricity I've used in 16 years just for sub pumps.
Well, you're having a meeting with the electric company, right?
Yes.
What's the follow-up
Yes.
after that?
That's just one issue. Remember, we have different things going on.
The electric company should not allow any water to come from their parking lot.
Correct. Yes.
And that's where they have to step up to the plate and contain their water. They have to contain that water. That's a very basic thing. The people who, when you build something next to another entity, you are not allowed to let that water drain to the next.
Correct.
And the electric company has to maintain or put it in a big drain tank. They have to be the ones who are
And like
responsible.
I said, that's just one area.
That might be just one.
That's one issue.
How do we make them do that? Apparently, no efforts have been successful for years. So how do we accomplish that that goal, make them responsible for their runoff.
Yeah, they have to be responsible for that runoff. I know that from when I built a rink in Bluebell. We had a retention basin. We were not allowed to have any
Right.
water coming from our parking lot into the next.
So-
And we would be fined
But
if
is
we...
this something the township, in other words, is this something the township is going to hold them responsible for? Or is this something that you're going to look at us and say, listen, you need to retain an attorney, or
I think there has to be something of that nature,
of what nature?
of holding them responsible either by fines or by,
The
saying
township.
that you have to do something about that water coming off your property.
Okay.
That's, and I don't know exactly how our ordinances will follow on that. But from my past experience in Bluebell, Pennsylvania, that was sole. You cannot allow that water to go anywhere off your
Right,
property.
because it's also creating standing water, which you're not allowed to have standing water in all of our backyards,
Yeah, exactly.
which
So,
causes, as you know,
I
mosquitoes and
think,
everything else.
Take that award away from them that they got.
What I think
But,
should happen,
that's my own thought.
what I think should happen, I'm thinking the committee's probably going to lean on me and direct me to evaluate this, and very, very quickly. My part of this is the engineering evaluation and to find a solution. Atlantic Electric tells me they're willing to solve this problem. If, first let me evaluate the problem. I'm going to give a report to the committee, and the next step is Atlantic Electric going to, perform the actions that I recommend? And I think
And
we'll
that's
find
great,
that out
but we
pretty
need a
quick.
timeline. We need to give them a timeline. We need to tell them, listen, this needs to be corrected, and this needs to be corrected by this date. They've suffered too long. I mean,
I
do you
agree.
agree? Because if
Oh, no,
not,
I-
they
Yes.
could be willing to do it next year or 2 years from now.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was on, I go by there, I designed 32nd on the repaving, and I know there's a drainage problem there. And I put in storm drains for that. I didn't know the severity of the problem, that's all. Now that I know it, and I could tell by the attendance
Right.
tonight,
There's
this-
at
I'll
least
be out.
half of our development that we know of right now, and we're doing more surveys, we might be getting more back, that tell us that more than half maybe of our development has water issues in their homes.
What would help me is, as I go through my evaluation of Atlantic Electric, to have a point person, a contact person from Chancellor's Place that I could work with, that has knowledge of all, that would help me, that I could have one person, and that person could report back to,
So, so Marge will be our, since she manages our community, and we have our own team, right, so, of water committee.
All right.
yeah.
So why don't we allow Steve to do what he needs to do? This did come before us last year, and it was addressed by Atlantic Electric. Obviously, I have a background in, I'm a plumber, so I kind of know what he's talking about here. So what he described to me would have, in a sense, fixed the problem. Obviously, it didn't. So this is why I want to go out there with Steve so I can see for myself what exactly is going on, and not just look at Atlantic Electric, but I want to take a walk through your neighborhood to see exactly how's this happening, so we can try and figure it out. I mean, we have a source. We have to get rid of that source, and then we got to find out are you still having the problem after that. So it sounds like you are. So there might be other issues here that. But you're never going to figure out what they are until you get rid of the one problem.
And if I could ask, when you do walk the property, that you contact me, because since I've been there, there's only me and I think 2 or 3 other neighbors that have been there for the full 16 years.
That's
I would
fine.
like to walk it with you, so this way I can show you what was done from the very beginning in 2003.
We'll do this through your
Yeah,
your
yeah, that's fine.
homeowners association, and then any of you guys want to be there, that's fine. The only thing is, I want to be able to talk to Atlantic Electric. I've been known to be forceful, but at the same token, they got to be given an opportunity to do what they need to do, but they also need to be told that either they do it or that we're going to have to do something about
We need a
this. We
timeline
can't,
for
we
that.
can't just
Yeah,
keep
this
this.
has been going on too long. We need a timeline. We need to tell them, say, listen, this has got to get fixed, and this has got to get fixed. by this
Unfortunately, this isn't the only area of the township that we have problems with these water basins. Water basins are a nightmare.
Do you think that they all have something in common as far as getting the proper inspections or whatnot done? Because why would that be? I mean, I know our township, listen, we're
don't know.
full of clay and whatnot, then maybe there needs to be a certain different type of a basin drain built there.
I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak on that, but I know we have issues in places, and we try to address them as we can.
Okay. And you
All
guys
right.
will contact. Thank
Yep.
you, I appreciate you listening.
If
Yep.
not tonight,
This is-
tomorrow
this
morning.
16 years of
I would like to get your phone.
We hear
I'd
you.
like to get your phone number too before I.
Yeah, I'll give you my card.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Evening, Mayor, committee members. My name is John Newsom. This is my wife, Renee Newsom.
Good
We
evening.
live in Chancellor Place also. I was here about 5 years ago in 2014 for the same issue. Our basement flooded because our sump pump was overcome with water. We paid thousands of dollars to reestablish our basement, and in November it happened again because of the water issues that everybody is talking about. But, go ahead.
And I don't want to keep going on. I just want to make sure you understand the overall thing that we're talking about. Like, we've walked around to our properties for years. Individual homeowners have been dealing with this issue, thinking that it was just their home flooding. And now that we're all coming together, there are over 40 homes in our communities that have either flooded, have their sump pumps running, have standing water. We have, we have concerns about mosquitoes being around with all that standing water. And like Mr. Silva said, we know the basins are an issue, and it's not, we may assume they were designed correctly, but like you said, the overflow, it's not, we have a dry basin, the water's not going into that, the basin that it's supposed to go into. It's a construction, a design issue. It's not just let's fix, we can't keep it in isolation. And I just want to make sure you understand it's not just one or two families. It's 40 plus that we know about, and we're on Princeton. So we're talking Princeton and Chancellor, not just the row from 32nd Avenue. We're all being
Right.
affected dramatically. Our sump pump right now, make progress. We're at like 20 seconds, going off every 20 seconds, and that's not okay. So we're just asking for help.
And I'm willing, I really want to solve the problem. I need to know where all the issues are so I could start looking at each one of them. I've been in contact with your engineer, Pete Dolce, who was hired by the association recently, and I said to Pete, I need to get involved with Atlantic Electric, and he was the engineer that designed the basins at Atlantic Electric years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I want to because I don't want to solve a few problems. I want to evaluate and solve everybody's problem.
If it's unsolvable.
And I just would like to say lastly, I know that it's having a dramatic impact on a lot of our neighbors. A lot of our neighbors are very concerned about the resale of their homes, and a lot of them are actually planning. We're talking about making Hamilton Township a better place, but a lot of people are getting ready and to try to figure out a way to leave because of the water issues.
And try not to put it in a public eye so they can sell their property. So that affects us all as a community.
And the interesting thing about it, if you look at the basins that come closer to Babcock, and I go through there a lot because I live right on the other side, they fill up and they drain out. And so obviously, I think the locale where the problem is coming from. The idea is we've got to do more than impress upon them. And the man you're meeting with, you got to just tell Kenny, it's it. You got to do something about it. You, of all people, should know with a utility company that you have an obligation, and you know better than Steve.
Yep.
He's the man that'll get it going.
I'll get
He
it
is.
going. Okay.
Yeah, I think we've heard your problem, and I think there is an approach that we have.
Give us an opportunity to get into this, and we'll get back to you.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hi, David Forgione, 7 Princeton Place. Mr. Silva, if you were to go by down Babcock, you will find that the 2 drainage basins are always dry. The one in the middle perpetual water.
Yep.
So they're not always dry.
You got a
That
lot of,
water's
you got a
been-
lot of wet area in the middle in there. I'm not blaming it on that. It's just the way, but it never got to a point that I've seen it lately. Okay? Where they're
The wet area in the middle, then the left side would have water also.
Yeah.
It's just this middle area that has water, and it's causing the flooding, which causes the ice. The first time that kid slips at the bus stop, you're gonna have a lawsuit. The first time somebody gets encephalitis from the mosquitoes that we're gonna have this summer because of the excess water, somebody's gonna come after somebody. But that's my concern is Babcock. If you look at Babcock, the drains go to the middle. On the side where Chancellor Place is not, there's a curb for part of it, and there's no drainage off of that. All the drainage from, I guess, the condos or the townhomes, all flows down and goes into the one, which goes into that central drain. We had 68 inches of rain. The one on the right has never been wet, and the one on the other side of those have never been wet. So here's my concern is, it was built in 2003, and I've been in there since. I've had water off and on problems with that. All these people with water are going to start getting mold. You might have respiratory problems. So somebody's going to get, if it isn't solved, somebody along the way is probably going to be named in that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. They built it in 2003. The development was built across the pike. There's another development, Cologne, going towards 50. There's a development off to the right. No. If you go down Cologne Avenue, past Oakcrest, make a left, there's a development off to the right.
Crest Estates?
I guess that's
Estates,
it.
yeah.
That was built after this. Once they built this, they realized that the houses were built too close, the streets were too narrow. Since that time, I believe there hasn't been a development with as narrow streets as ours and houses as close together. So somewhere along the line, someone realized that that was wrong, building it that way. Could that be the cause of the problem? That it was approved, this plan was approved, and the houses are too close together, there's not enough drainage for that, and the placement of the the retention basins, or the drainage basins, there are retention basins now, is not in the proper place. They weren't placed in the proper place. So that's something, is there any way we could find out if the original plans that were approved, why then were the plans of other developments changed after this first development was made? Does anyone know?
That's why the first step for me is to gather the facts, and
Okay.
that's why I started pulling plans from your development, and I want to evaluate those plans very quickly and then walk the property and take a look and see. I want to see if it's built according to the plans. Just do the
It all has
evaluation.
to do with zoning. The zoning had to have been changed for these other developments to now have not as narrow streets or houses as close together to be approved.
Planning.
The plans that I'm looking at are the ones that were approved. These are the legal documents that are, in the township files, and that's what I started with. I can't answer to whether zoning changed or street widths changed, or I can't answer that, but
Will somebody be able to answer that, why they were changed?
you know what, I'll talk to Phil, I'll see what, he's been here long enough, whatever.
That's
the
fine, as
sequence-
long as we can
I
look
I
into
find
that.
out.
But it's not just 32nd Street, it's also Babcock, and the drainage off of Babcock needs to be looked into, because like I said, the one side, there is no drains for it. It all flows into the one area.
When I'm driving down the roads, that's all I'm looking at is basins all the time. I know the
Thanks.
basins you're talking
That's all I
about.
want to mention.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak?
You must dream about.
Mr. Stride.
Mr. Mayor, I was glad to hear some of the positive things that you're trying to do personally to encourage development in our township with the abatements. But I would like to, if I could, return to 7B, where the township spent, I think, $25,000 on the property on 7th Avenue to demolish the property and attach a lien. I think this is where I think the rubber hits the road, when the taxpayers now have to start paying for the lack of code enforcement in our township. And I think this has been going on for a long time.
I know there have been efforts to improve that, but now it's time to step up. You can't just start developing without taking care of the existing problems. The people who you hire to do code enforcement, it's critical because as roofs in particular deteriorate and water starts dripping into them, the houses are going to end up collapsing. And I know that you guys have been aware of it, but it's up to the Township Committee, I think, to hold accountable the people you hire, your administrator, your department heads of planning and zoning. This is critical because this, and we've talked about the decreased property values because of flooding. You also get decreased property values because of houses that are collapsing amongst themselves. And there's others in Mays Landing in particular, in very highly densely populated areas, not to mention others in areas that are not so visible. So hopefully the fact that we are now spending money, not just on that one particular property on 7th, but there's one down the street, which was a fire and maybe an insurance problem, which is not necessarily the same. But I know there's one more that I've addressed for several years now near the signboard at Sugar Hill that continues to have a roof problem. And it's just a matter of time where this building or house that is abandoned, there's no one living there, the same thing is going to happen. It's only bigger and it's going to cost more. So hopefully, okay, if you take this particular case where you've spent tens of thousands of dollars to demolish a house, attach a lien, which you may or may not recover, okay, because interest charges are going to go onto that, and it may make the property where someone can't afford to buy it or doesn't want to. So hopefully this is a teachable moment, and you impress upon the people who you hire to do their job. I think it'll be, that will be a benefit to the community, the same as your efforts to bring in ratables and make the township a more desirable place for businesses to invest.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Link.
I don't want to take too much longer. You know, I appreciate your patience. There was a lot of great discussion, but I'd like to discuss a basin of a different nature named Lake Lenape. I understand the last time, the last meeting, someone from Township Committee was going to be dealing with the dam committee. Is any update on what's going on with the dam out there?
Yeah, there was a report put out by one of the freeholders, Bertino, of all the projects they're in. And obviously that was slated for, was item number 17 on the list. That was slated for work to begin later this year. They had it, well, that's government, you understand, okay? Nothing moves as fast as the private sector, but government takes so long. And we don't condone it, but they've had engineer upon engineer in and they study it. And I believe they finally came up with a solution for repairment of the dam, okay, or replacement of it.
That's
if you ask
progress.
me, I think it's going to be replaced.
Yeah, okay,
And honestly, it's a long time in coming. I think they're wrestling with the idea of doing the bridge, because that's going to take the road out. And then I suggested to them, do them both at the same time if you're going to have it out. Because
Yeah,
then, you know, you're going to be working there and you might as well get it done. But I think I don't remember what the final figure was. They're still, they came up with estimates. I think it's going to be a lot more reasonable than they originally anticipated. I think they talked about replacement of the dam somewhere between 7 and 10 mil. But I think the numbers may come in a lot lower from what I hear. We haven't had a meeting in a while. County calls the meetings.
I see. Okay.
There's
Is there a
4
repository for all that information? Is that me coming up here and bugging you guys about it or
No,
making
it's
phone
not
calls?
a problem. I wish we could come out and give you more explicit information on it. And I'll talk to the solicitor after. Maybe we can push them to have a dam committee meeting and then get the results of that and bring it to the public.
Great. I appreciate it very much. And
Because
you
I know it creates
any progress
issues.
is
It
welcome.
creates issues for you and water in your basement too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that.
Jim, the county is looking at holding one of their meetings right here in this chamber. And I'm sure as soon as we find out, we'll get that date out to you. That would be a good time to address them directly
Then you
too.
could come in here and bug them.
Oh, they're having the
Seriously,
meeting, they're-
put them right on the
There
spot.
myself.
All right, great. I appreciate that. And I look forward
Okay.
to,
Thank you.
hearing about that meeting. Thanks.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the public?
Move to close the public portion?
Second.
Motion is second to close public portion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion for adjournment is in order.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?